friends, today I'm going to give you a quick how to play for my new game, Stitchery Faire. Stitchery Faire is a cozy solo journaling game where you are a seamstress or a tailor who has come to the Stitchery Faire, and you are going to create fabulous garments for all of the patrons who come to you over the 10 weeks of the fair. So I have here the essential character sheet and chart sheet, which you can print, or you can do it all in your own journal or notebook without the pre-printed sheets, or you can get the Stitchery Faire journal with the pre-printed pages inside. So I have my character and charts. I have my commission ledger sheet. You'll need one of these for every week of the fair. Again, you can use your own journal or sketchbook if you would rather. And I have my final design sheet where the final garment design will go. So to get started, you need 1 or 2 dice, a pencil, and a pack of playing cards, just regular cards, although I do have special Stitchery Faire cards that will have all of the information for each of the characters printed right on them to make it easier. So to start with, we will need to create our character. First, let's roll for our character's name. Let's see, this is going to be first name, last name. So 5 and 6. Let me check my chart. I have all my charts on the computer at the moment, not printed out. Let me check my chart and I will get back with the name. Our seamstress today is named Lavinia Stitchwell. I think that sounds like a very good seamstress name. I'll just write that down. Here is where, if I wanted to describe her appearance, her coloring, height, whatever details, hair color that you might want to say, I'm going to just speed through this to give you a quick overview, so I'm going to leave that blank and move on to her heritage and motivation. To discover her heritage, we're going to draw a card. We have the 4 of Hearts, and this will tell us what sort of a family she grew up in. The heart suit represents artisans, so our seamstress's childhood was filled with hands-on creativity. She learned to sew before she could write. So we'll write down 4 of Hearts. And the rank, the 4, gives you an idea of were they working on a small scale or a large scale. Just use that as you wish to inform your journaling. We will return this card to the deck, and then we will roll 1 dice to find out what her slight enchantment is. And this is an optional step. If you want to play an unmagic-y game, that's fine. The enchantment is just a little something. So this is an even number. So the slight enchantment it triggers is that you can faintly hear a garment stitches. Well-made seams hum softly, while flawed ones emit a discordant buzz. So imperfect work can be difficult to ignore. So that is what her slight enchantment is. Next, we want to find out how she feels about her heritage. Does she keep it secret? Does she talk about it often? We will roll 1 dice again to discover that. So we rolled a 4. That means that her attitude towards her heritage and slight enchantment is independent. She doesn't wish to be defined by it and seldom mentions it. So it's not a secret, but she doesn't tell everybody. Finally, we will roll again to discover her motivation. And for any of these, you can also choose instead of rolling if you see a selection that you would like better than what you roll. It's your game. You can do that. We rolled a 4, so her motivation is to be recognized for her talent. Her motivating talent is charm, so I'm just going to note that over here. And once a season, you can double that talent. We'll get to talents in a minute, but first, let's arrive at the fair. First, we have to decide what is the season of the fair. So we'll roll 2 dice. We have an even number and an even number. That means that our fair will run from spring into summer. So I'm just going to circle that on the weeks and seasons chart. So So the first 5 weeks will be in spring, the second 5 weeks will be in summer. Next, we'll roll 1 dice to find out which booth. We rolled a 1. Lavinia Stitchwell's booth is a small stone-arched alcove tucked between 2 larger vendors along the main walkway. The pro of this booth is that all attendees must walk past you, but the con is that you can be overshadowed by your larger neighbors. Next, we'll discover our neighbors. You can draw 2 to 3 cards. I'm just going to draw 1 card right now to show you how to do this. So we draw cards until we get an odd numbered card. So the 3 of diamonds is our neighbor. Let me check my community chart to find out who is next to us in the fair. Our neighbor is Cordelia Fernsby, and we're going to roll another dice to see what she specializes in. Cordelia Fernsby sells souvenirs from the seaside, and you can decide how you want to interpret this in your story. Does that mean that this town is situated on the seaside, or that she brings them from some other area to sell at the fair? I'm just going to also write down 3 of diamonds. All right, now we know our booth. When you're playing the game, you can do another neighbor or 2, so you have neighbors on both sides, maybe the person across the hall from you. It's up to you. Now we'll move on to our talents. Our seamstress, Lavinia Stitchwell, has 3 talents: charm, artistry, and diligence. We can assign 1, 2, and 3 to each of them. I think that, let's see, she grew up as an artisan. So I think that we'll give her artistry 3. She wants to be recognized for her charm. Maybe that's a thing she needs to work on. We'll give charm 1, so diligence gets a strength of 2. You can have a total of a strength of 6 for each talent. Now we'll roll on the tool table to see what starting tools she has. 1 tool from the charm table, 3 from artistry, and 2 from diligence. For her first tool, she has an embroidery pattern design book. And here is where you could also, if you would rather just draw a little picture of the book. Here's a little book with embroidery patterns and a fancy border. Next, let's find out what her 3 artistry tools are. 1 and 2. She has a die set that can be combined to create any shade. I'm going to draw maybe 3 little bottles. And for her second artistry tool, 6 and 3. And a scrap bag to keep all of her scraps tidy, to pull patches from, and for inspiration. Our last artistry tool, 4 and 1. Floss on scalloped cards that always perfectly matches. All right, our 2 diligence tools, 5 and 4. A pair of scissors that never dulls. And the last starting tool, 1 and 2. An iron that never scorches the fabric. That would be a very useful thing. and it might come in handy if she gets a complication later on. And you don't have to draw pictures, you can just write down what the tools are. You can also print out the expanded sheets that give you much more space for your tools. Alright, now it is time to cast our face card characters. These are 3 characters who will turn up multiple times in the game, and as you meet them, you will be building towards one of the 3 endings to the fair. There's the Jack, who has the relationship ending, either friendship, found family, romantic, however you want to interpret that. The Queen, who is the patronage ending, a person who wants you to come and work for them permanently as their own personal dressmaker. And the King, the establishment ending, where there's someone who will help you get your own shop established. So, there are only 3 characters, not a different character for every face card, so we need to find out who those characters are. We will shuffle the deck and draw a card from 2 to 10 to cast our Jack character. So we drew the 2 of hearts. 2 of hearts. We'll just record that right there. And then we need to check 2 different tables. We'll check the Jack table to find out the Jack's first name and their reason for seeking you out. And then we'll check the community table for their last name and their specialty. So, from the Jack table, we discovered that our 2 of hearts is named Hans, and he finds that your company always inspires him. Let's check the community table and roll 1 die to find out his surname and his specialty. Our Jack, Hans, is a potter whose last name is Kilnsworthy. Now we will repeat the process, shuffle our cards, and draw another card to cast our Queen character. The 5 of spades, so I will record that here. Then I'll check the Queen table to find out her first name and why she seeks you out. Her name is Victoria, and she trusts that you could keep her and her household well clothed for every occasion. Now I will roll and check the community table for her last name and specialty. Victoria's last name is Honeyset, and she and her family keep bees. Finally, let's cast our King character. The 10 of diamonds. Let's check our King table to find out the King's first name and why he seeks you out. Our King is named Cedric, and he believes that your business could benefit his own. Let's look at the community table and roll for his specialty. 6. His last name is Quicksilver, and he is an apothecary who stocks powders and elixirs. All right, we now have everything done to move to the last step of preparation, to divide the deck. For this, we will put the face cards and aces in one deck, the odd cards in another, the even cards and jokers in a third. This is the story deck. It has our face card characters, and every king, every jack, every queen is the same character, no matter what the suit is. And the aces, which will trigger festivals if they are drawn. Then we have our even cards plus jokers, and that is our deck of patrons and complications. Finally, we have the odd cards. These are the observers who, at the end of each week, will give you feedback, wanted or unwanted, on what they think of the garment that you created. If I were playing the game, I would, before moving on, draw a picture here of my portrait at the opening of the fair. You can draw yourself in your space at the booth, maybe include a shelf with some of your starting tools, or draw in your neighbor somehow. For right now, I'm just going to move ahead to playing the first week at the fair. So we'll set this sheet off to the side and move to our ledger sheet. To start the week, we'll mark the week. It's week number 1 of 10, and it is spring. Our patron card we have not drawn yet, so we'll get to that in a minute. First, we have to listen for rumors in the hall. First, we roll to find out what is the weather rumored to be like this week. And we got a 2. The weather is rumored to be golden, clear, sunny skies, the best weather you can have. We'll find out through the week if that's really what the weather is like. Next, we will draw a card from our story deck. If it's a face card, there's no festival. If it's an ace, there is a festival this week, and we'll draw again to find our face card. We have a face card, so that means that there will be a festival that week. We'll record that in our rumors. Let me look it up on our table and see what our festival is. It's the Spring Flower Festival, where the hall will be decorated in flowers and people will exchange small bouquets of herbs or flowers. Since we didn't draw a face card yet, we'll draw again to find out which key encounter we'll have with one of our story characters. And we drew the king. It doesn't matter what suit he is or anything, because we know that our king character is the one that we created here, Cedric Quicksilver, an apothecary. He believes that your business could benefit his. How that works, you will get to figure out as the story progresses. So I will put that in my rumors. It's rumored that Cedric Quicksilver will be going through the fair. Now it's time to discover our patron for the week. We take the patron deck and we lay down 3 cards. 1, 2, 3. These are our 3 possible patrons. So we'll look at them, decide which one we want, and the other will be discarded or shuffled back into the deck. Usually if there are 3 patrons, if there was a patron here, then you would choose one, discard one, and put one back into the deck. Since we got a joker, that means that we will have a complication, and that means that we only have 1 extra patron, so you can decide if you want to put them back in the deck, so they might return later, or if you want to discard them, which will trigger a creature visit. I think that I am going to choose this card as my patron because that number will be easier to satisfy with my current lower starting talents. And this card I'm going to discard so that I will have a creature visit at some point in the week. So we need to write down our patron card, the 2 of spades. We need to mark that we will have a complication in phase 2. Here's our phase 2 section on the ledger, and I'm just going to mark that. There will be a complication in that phase. That we can just shuffle right back in. Complications always go back in, so they turn up again and again. And let me check on our community table which creature the 10 of diamonds will trigger for us. If we discard this card, we will have a hedgehog visit us in phase 3. So I'm going to note that in my rumors section. And discard this card. And then I will also note it over here, hedgehog, cross off one of the boxes. If a creature visits you 3 times during the game, then it can become a permanent companion if you want, and you can roll on its action table at any point in the game. Now it's time to learn more about our chosen patron. Oh, I forgot to say, when you have your three cards here, they correspond to your 3 life stages: maid, matron, or matriarch. So this is a maid, a younger person. We can decide what exactly we want that to mean, if that's a child or just a young woman, whatever you feel most like creating a garment for. Let's look up this card and roll for a specialty on the community table. Our patron for the week is young Marigold Burrows, whose family grows manglewurzels. I'm going to just write some details here on my record and reflect sheet, and then we'll roll to find her core wish for this garment. Let's discover what her core wish is. We rolled a 3. She wishes to look distinguished. Now that we know a little bit about our patron, it's time to find out what our patron thinks of us. So we are going to take our charm, which our charm is at 1. So we have our charm. We get to roll 1d6 for our grace. We got 4 grace. So our total score is 5 versus our patron's number of 2. As 5 is larger than 2, after we've discussed the garment with Marigold Burrows, what she wishes for, how she wants to look distinguished even though she is a manglewurzel farmer, she is confident that we understand her and can create the garment of her dreams. This is where the creative part takes over. You will draw a picture or find a picture and paste it into your ledger and write a few sentences about your patron. I'm just going to keep it super simple as I move through this demonstration. I imagine that Marigold is perhaps the young daughter of the manglewurzel farmer and wishes to get a dress that is made for her, for her kind of entrance into society. In the book, there are other reflection questions that you can go on and journal your story as you wish, or you can move along and keep it more just a little entry here and there. Next, we move into phase 2 of the commission, and this could be the same day or it could be the next day, your next appointment with your patron. This is the stage where you find out what opinions your patron has on their garment. Marigold only has an opinion on color and one other opinion that we will roll for. So let's first roll for color. 4. So she would prefer a dress in blues. I'm going to write over here opinions. And she has one other opinion. We'll roll to discover the category. Oh, occasion. So she wants a garment for a certain occasion. Now that we know the category, we'll roll again to find out what is this occasion. It's a wedding, I assume it's not her wedding, but some other wedding that she's going to and wants to look her best. Maybe this is her first time as a bridesmaid instead of a flower girl. Now, the fun thing about this system is this same card, if it had been placed as the third card in the row instead of the first, this could be a grandmother. Marigold Burroughs, the matriarch of the family. Her core wish could have been something else, like to be comfortable, and the inspiration opinion could have been that she wanted the fabric to be thick wool. And there, with the same card, but different prompts, you get a completely different character. It's time to resolve our artistry. Now, there is a mishap triggered by the Joker in the very beginning of the stage here. So before we resolve if she's enchanted or dismayed by the design you draw up for her, we need to roll and find out what is the mishap. Actually have to roll 2 dice for the mishap. 1 and 1. So this mishap doesn't actually give us, take away any points. So I'm just going to draw a line through there. It doesn't take away any points, it just adds another opinion. And I realized that I forgot one very important step when creating this character. We did not roll to find out what her manner is. So I would roll 2 dice for that. 1 and... So her manner is attentive. So she's paying attention. She notices all of the little details. This is another way that the same card can generate so many different characters. With a different roll, she could have been secretive. Alright, let's roll again to find out what our additional opinion is. 3. So she has something that inspires this dress. And let's roll to find what that is. 6 and 2. And her inspiration that she wants to go with is foliage, which pairs interesting with blues and wedding. I'll write it down and then we'll do some brainstorming. Alright, so our artistry is at 3. We'll roll 1 dice for how much grace we have during this encounter. Oh, we only have 1 grace. That additional opinion must have kind of upset our Lavinia's Stitchwell. So our total is still 4 versus the patron's 2, so she is still pleased. She is enchanted with the design that we come up with. So now, for the recording step, we're just going to brainstorm some ideas for this blue wedding dress inspired by foliage and kind of come up with a little design board. So maybe the foliage is, I'm just going to draw a little scrap of fabric here with kind of a scrolling leafy design. Since there are blues, maybe it's kind of more like a teal. We'll push it towards a teal sort of a design. And you can add other colors. So maybe we'll add a little bit of teals and greens. And here's our little fabric scrap. Let's see, what other ways could we incorporate leaves or foliage into our design? Perhaps if there were kind of fluttering sleeves, lacy edge sleeves. Now, foliage could make sense also with the Mangelwurzel aspect. Let's take a quick look at Mangelwurzels and see what sorts of leaves they have, which kind of goes well with the lettucey, fluttery look. So I think that I do like that fluttery sleeves look. So any other ideas that we have at this point, we can put down here for the dress. If I were playing the game, I would probably do a little bit more on here. I would put some color on it and think of some more ideas. Oh, I think that probably like a scalloped hem edge would be a good kind of foliage inspired thing. How do we make it appropriate for a wedding? Well, it's springtime, so just basically a nice spring dress in kind of blues and greens. maybe with kind of that stripes and ruffly leaves sort of fabric motif. I realized that I also forgot to mark on here that our king was the king of spades, which means that he was supposed to turn up in phase 1. We'll go back retroactively and fix that. As you draw each card, you should cross it off, circle it, or cross it off on your card chart here. This way, as you play the game, if your cards get shuffled up again, you can look back and say, oh, I already used that card, this card goes here, that card goes there. So we discarded our 10 of diamonds, so I'm going to cross that one off of the patron list. We chose the 2 of spades, so I'll circle that one. We also got this festival card, and we got this king card. So now we have marked our 4 cards that we have drawn so far. And let's go back and think about how that king encounter might have gone in phase 1. So our king, Cedric Quicksilver Apothecary. I think for the first encounter, he's just strolling through the fair. He's going to maybe not even talk to you, just kind of look over your booth as he goes from your larger neighbors on either side. So I'm just going to make a little note to myself that, oh, I saw him, I saw the apothecary strolling past, and he gave an interested look towards my booth, but didn't stop to chat. And this is the part where your creativity can take over. If you want to write a whole paragraph, a whole little story scene of watching him go by, or if you want to draw a little picture of him, your impression of him, maybe he's wearing a fabulous apothecary-like coat with long tails or a bunch of pockets. That's where your imagination can take over. So now it is time to move on to phase 3. We don't have a mishap here, and we will have a hedgehog visitor at some point during this phase. First, we'll roll to see how Marigold Burrows feels about the finished garment. Was her core wish to look distinguished? Was it fulfilled? We rolled a 2, so let's look at our chart. She's not fully satisfied, doesn't feel quite as distinguished as she thought she would, but it's a step closer. So that is her attitude towards this dress. She's happy with it, but she imagined distinguishment would feel even more. So we have our diligence, which is 2, plus roll for grace, 1. Oh, perhaps her opinion affected our graciousness, too. So for a total of 3, versus her 2, this is a very easy patron to satisfy. If we had someone who was a 4, we would not be satisfying them in this stage, and they would be disappointed. However, Marigold is delighted. Even though she didn't quite feel as distinguished as she wanted, she realized maybe she doesn't need to feel distinguished. Maybe she just needs to be happy in her own skin, in her own foliage-inspired dress at this wedding, and that's more important than looking distinguished. She is delighted. Now, our action step for this phase is to draw the picture, the final picture of the garment, and that can be either on your patron, just the garment by itself, or you can even choose a picture that you think really captures the spirit of the garment that you're trying to create and just paste it in there. So this is design number 1, commissioned by Marigold Burrows. Before I do that, let me also roll for the hedgehog. What does the hedgehog do while he's here? Now, this is something that you can, at any time, at any point in this phase where a creature is visiting, roll, and it'll just add to the story that you're building either in your head or on your page. So our hedgehog visitor, he just curls up into a ball and snores contentedly. Let's also take a look right now at the weather. So we rolled a 5, which means that the weather is even better than it was rumored to be. So it was rumored to be golden weather. It has stayed golden and beautiful. And as you finish creating this dress, you have a cozy little hedgehog curled up in a ball to keep you company. Perhaps in a pile of your fabric, or next to your pin cushion. Maybe the hedgehog chose your shop because you were a little quieter, less busy than the larger shops on either side of you. And he was just a nice, friendly little quiet companion as you finished this dress. Alright, I feel like this picture needs a little bit of color. We'll grab kind of a greenish blue, and here's another one, and a blue, and just give it a touch of color. So here is our final design. Let's go back to our to this page and make a few more notes, story notes. So, remembering what our slight enchantment is, you can hear if the seams are well made or not. Just think of all those ruffles, but they were all hemmed perfectly because otherwise, oh, you'd be able to hear that. So, perhaps, especially as the hedgehog visits, you know, hemming miles of ruffles perfectly. So their hum blends with the sound of the hedgehog snoring. We can also take a look at our tools just for story purposes and see is there anything that we particularly used for this commission. I think that perfectly matching floss color, especially with kind of the blues and greens palette of the dress, would be especially useful. So I'm just going to make a note of that, maybe over here in the opinions and inspiration. Color matching floss was invaluable. Now Marigold left you with a thoughtful gift when she picked up her garment. And I think as her family grows mangowurzels, it was probably a jar of spiced mangowurzel preserves. So I'm just going to make a little note of that also as well. All right, we are to the last stage, the final stage, where we find out what the community thinks of your creation. So to start with, we will take our observer's deck, draw one card, and this is the person who comments on our garment. I think I'm going to write the observer comments right here. So let's find out who our person is. Let's roll for their name, or for their specialty. And our observer is Harriet Flowerby, who makes cakes and cookies. Perhaps she was the wedding cake maker. Now let's roll to see what her manner is. 6 and 1. She has a nervous manner. Perhaps she's always afraid that someone's going to slam the door a little too hard and make her cakes fall. Now we're going to roll to find out what area of the garment Harriet Flowerby commented on. 5. So she comments on the materials. I'm just going to note that for now. And let's roll again to find out how she shares her opinion. Number 1. A whisper of gossip passed on from person to person. Now we have to resolve our reputation to find out if this was a complimentary piece of gossip or a criticism of the materials and pattern that we chose. So we can add together all of the talents that satisfied our patron, which is everyone. Because we had a very easy patron, we get to put our 1 charm, our 3 artistry, our 2 diligence, plus a grace roll of 2. Then we add those all together for 8 versus the observer card, which is 5. Oh, and before I forget, let's circle our observer so that we know that we've used that card. Plus, we don't have a second observer, plus the patron of 2. So that total is 7. And I see that I need to edit my sheet here and have a spot for our total. So we'll have the spot for the total there for 7. So we barely beat the observer and patron score of 7. So the gossip that we hear is a compliment. So let's think about how we want to record this compliment that we heard passed through the gossip chain. And I actually forgot that she doesn't only have one opinion because she is a rank 5 card. She actually has 2 opinions. So she has an opinion on the material that was used, but she also has an opinion on, that was the same one, so let's re-roll it. 3. She has an opinion on your patron, on Marigold. Does the garment reflect well on their taste and character? So let's think about how we're going to turn this into a little story piece or illustration to finish off our week 1. So I think that Harriet Flowerby made the wedding cake. So she was there, saw Marigold wearing her dress for the very first time. She commented on the material, how it suited her coloring so well, and the design just was a nice, fresh spring design for a young girl in the spring at a wedding. And she thought that it was very tasteful. It wasn't too showy, which would tie in with her wish to look distinguished, which wasn't fully realized. Like, she doesn't look more pretentious than she ought as a young girl attending a wedding. So the dress reflects well on Marigold's character and her taste. So perhaps let's just, we'll draw a little cartoon sketch, perhaps, of here's the wedding cake. She was nervous about the wedding cake, but not too busy to whisper to her friends her opinions of all the guests. And let's see, I wonder how Lavinia heard this little piece of gossip. Perhaps it was her neighbor Cordelia Fernsby, who sells oceanside trinkets in the stall beside her. So I think that's probably what happened. Being a larger shop with so many people coming through, everyone was talking about this wedding, and Cordelia happened to hear this little piece of gossip from Harriet Flowerby, and she passed it along to you. So I'm just going to make a note of that, and that will wrap our first week. So, Cordelia told me the most flattering comment that Mrs. Flowerby made about Marigold's dress. I'm delighted that my first commission has ended so very well. So, all that is left is to strengthen one of our talents. We can choose any one of our talents. I think since charm is only at 1 right now, let's strengthen charm to 2, and that means that we can also roll for one more charm tool, 1 and 6. And our new tool is a dress form, which will be very useful to display our gowns. Alright, and that is how you play Stitchery Faire. There are 10 weeks, and at the end of the 10 weeks, you will choose one of the endings that you have unlocked, and you will have 10 designs that you've made for your patrons. I hope you enjoyed this quick playthrough, and come and visit the Kickstarter campaign or my website, storyseamstress.com. Bye!